Hello and welcome to Distillery's Personalisation at Scale webinar. My name's Ella Roach and I'm Account Director at Distillery. So whether you've worked with us before or this is your first interaction with us, I want to say a big welcome to everyone and thanks for joining us today. So today is all about how you can personalise your content at scale. Personalisation is a tactic that's becoming increasingly important for brands to adopt when speaking to and engaging with their fans. Consumers expect personalised communications from the brands that they love, and the results stack heavily in favour of the brands who integrate personalisation into their communications versus those who don't. But personalisation isn't a new marketing approach. It's been around for decades, but it's a phenomenon that's being recognised more and more by the industry. This is a quote by Sir Martin Sorrell, who's just one of the leaders recognising the need for brands to use personalisation in their marketing efforts. This was taken from a Think with Google interview where he was speaking about the use of first-party data. So I'll just read through it now. Personalisation at scale creates a model which is totally different. It's tailored to the individual. It looks at what people are doing in a constructive way, not a destructive way. It means from a consumer point of view that it's more relevant. Growth is in the digital, and personalisation at scale is critically important because you and I as individuals would much rather receive a message which was tailored to my need. I think that this quote sets up just how important this topic is for brands. So now moving on to the agenda for today's webinar. So we'll have some brief introductions. We'll talk about personalisation versus customisation, as lots of people get those two mixed up. We'll present the 3 opportunities for personalisation in this current climate, how to integrate personalisation in a user journey. We'll introduce Boundary, which is our personalisation engine here at Distillery. Part 6 is all about how not to be creepy and using the right data sets when reaching out to your fans. And then lastly, we'll end with a Q&A. So before we get into it, a little bit of housekeeping. So we'll be putting everyone on mute. So if you do have a question, please write to us in the Q&A app and we'll do our best to answer these at the end. I would try to tell you where these are on Zoom, but apparently these are all in different places depending on your device. So I'll leave that with you. If you want to continue the conversation beyond the webinar, and we hope you do, we'll share our details at the end, as well as information on our next upcoming webinar, which is taking place next week. And finally, for those of you who may not have seen it, you can download our personalisation guide from our website at wearedistillery.co. So here are your hosts for today's webinar. So Peter Hoffer, who's our Senior Strategist at Distillery, myself, and Steve Ween, who's MD. And I'll pass over to Steve to introduce Distillery.
Thanks, Ella. And thank you everyone for joining us for our session today. Should be a really interesting discussion all around personalisation. And I wanted to introduce Distillery first up, who we are and sort of what we're all about, because so there's 3 of us on the webinar today who make up a much wider team of distillers based between Singapore and London. And what we're all about is thinking, making and blowing up content to help brands win new fans. Today, we're obviously discussing one of those tactics, which is all around personalisation. You know, as distillers, you know, we're agile, we're forward thinking, we're a content studio that uses data and insight to really maximize the success of your content. We love the challenge of winning new fans for brands with super targeted content strategies. We like to think of ourselves as distillers of great ideas to create content that helps connect, find, engage and entertain your audiences. We're all about collaboration, we're all about open discussions, and we're all about agility. So as a content studio that's grounded in evidence and insight, it's all about the data, right? And we're always measuring the performance of our content and looking to increase the ROI on our clients or our customers' content performance. And I wanted to set up the session today with some of the results that we found with our personalized content, because we see one of the reasons we're so passionate about personalization is because for our clients, it works. We see huge increases in things like watch time, in email open rates. And over the past few years, we've learned so much about personalization. We've developed our own approach and indeed our own technology, which Peter will talk about a little bit later in the session. But just to make sure that we're all on the same page, Peter's now going to kick off talking through the key differences between customization and personalization.
Cool, thanks, Steve. So yes, as Steve mentioned, so often when we meet with clients or we meet people at events, they'll interchange customization and personalization. So we thought we'd just spend a few minutes for us to really give a definition of what we think of those two terms. So the first one is customization. Now this is where a brand or a company allows customers to make changes to a product. So they will give a mechanism that allows consumers to input a name, upload a photo, share a funny message, and it allows them to share it with their friends and family. So it's a nice, fun activity. So you see on the right-hand side the well-known example of this customization of the Share a Coke campaign. But if you think of other brands like Moonpig, where you can customize with a photo or name, or even a sneaker company that allows you to customize with your favorite colors. What customization does, it only gives consumers a chance to make it their own, but it doesn't really give a brand an insight into what the customers are doing or what they can do for the customers in the future. So there's not much learning for the brands when it comes to pure customization. But when we go to the next level of personalization, this is where the really insightful things can happen. So what we mean by personalization is that a brand can use layers of data to help them speak directly to consumers on a one-to-one basis. So if you think back on the Coca-Cola example, they prepared a mechanism and gave it out to millions, where something like this, a personalized example, it will only go for a one-to-one relationship with each of the consumers. So for example, a well-known example is the Spotify end-of-year playlist. So this is really personalized to each person's listening habits. So my listening habits would be full of Backstreet Boys, which is completely different to what Ella or Steve would listen to. But what this example does really well is it shows me as a consumer that Spotify really knows what I like, what I need, and are able to provide services that are personalized just for me. And another way of looking at this is, I am more likely to share this on my Facebook or my Twitter to all my friends because, I'm the hero, even though my taste in music might be a bit suspect, but allows me to be the hero and share that to my contacts, which in turn gets the brand's name out there as well. So to summarize, unlike customization, personalization is aiming to give consumers what they want even before they even ask for it. So now I will hand it back to Steve because he has a couple things to consider when it comes to personalization.
Yeah, so as we sort of get into sort of the opportunities and some examples of great personalization, I just want to reflect on the fact that we really need two key elements to create really engaging personalized content. Those two elements consist of data, and we need some base layer content. So that data element, we need that either that first party data or that opt-in piece where we can extract data that is relevant and that really means something to your fans. Ideally, we will have a second data source as well. So I'll talk through an example shortly, which would not only weave in a choice of clothing, but also a weather element. So once we combine that, we've got that fan data, we look at great content that we can blend that data with. And you can see in the middle of this visual here, that's when the personalized video or the personalized content really sings. And I just thought it's just key to reflect on the fact that without those two things, it's just a non-starter. There's there's not even a conversation to be had. So we need to get those two things right off the bat. Now it's an understatement to say that we're in unprecedented, gosh, the number of times that word's being used of late, but we're in really challenging times. And as content creators, it's presented some real challenges and opportunities for us as a content studio. And I really wanted to reflect on the top 3 opportunities that personalization really offers in the current climate. No longer can we easily go out and shoot, for example. Comms are more challenging. We're not meeting face to face, obviously, at the moment. And from those challenges come these 3 opportunities that we really see for brands, for us to help them win new fans. The first opportunity is all around reimagining existing assets. Personalization, as we've talked about, offers the ability to create these deeper connections and indeed conversations, at scale. And I want to emphasize that today's discussion is around content. We are not talking about programmatic advertisements. We're talking about adding value, not just selling. So successful personalization really creates that deeper conversations with your audience to build fandom and give them timely information. And it's really a time to reimagine that content that you've already got at your fingertips, that you've already created in the past, and seeing how that can be reshaped, reimagined, layered with interesting, relevant data to create assets, to create that deeper connection. So this is an example storyboard that we've developed for Deliveroo as an example. So here you can see how we've taken existing restaurant assets and assets from restaurants, from the restaurant partners of Deliveroo. We've layered over different data sets, and this storyboard will be brought to life through animation and rendered through our video personalization engine. So this example is like a month in review. Here's our month in review. You can see that in the first storyboard. The second storyboard there shows the number of 5-star reviews this particular restaurant has received that month. The third storyboard brings to life some shots again from that already exist on Deliveroo, that existing content piece, layers over that positive comments data over the top. On the 4th storyboard, there you can see again the number of meals that are delivered. The 5th storyboard shows the most popular meal, combining that with the visual asset in the background. And the last storyboard, the heroes, the fact that they were the 2nd most popular Deliveroo restaurant in the area. So there you can see how we can extract very easily from Deliveroo's data that the overlays, and we can combine that with existing creative that already exists within the app, on the website, to build together a really engaging visual that engages in a one-to-one relationship between the brand, Deliveroo, and their restaurant partner. So that's the first opportunity. The second opportunity is really around maximizing your content investment. As counterintuitive as it might sound, as a content studio, we're so often encouraging our clients to actually make less content, and actually create content that's more strategic and is really adding value. We're bombarded by content left, right, and center that is just sort of shouting at us, and to really cut through with really great content, what we've really learned is all about, creating answers. So we know that content, it can be a really heavy investment for brands. And this second opportunity is around maximizing that investment. And the latest edition of our podcast, Mark Ronicus discusses how so often the best personalization comes when you as a consumer don't realize that the content that you're consuming has been personalized. So really, let's maximize your existing content, sweat your assets to get the best ROI from that content investment. And this example that I'm going to talk you through now is how to plug into a recommendation engine. So taking a fashion brand's existing content, so this is all around black shoes, we can, our personalization engine can plug into that recommendation engine, know that, right, every time that Ella looks on this fashion website, she's looking at black shoes, black boots, for example. And so instead of feeding out a static carousel or 3 different videos, actually what we can do is plug into the recommendation engine that currently exists. We can plug into the existing content. We know that you're interested in black shoes and you've looked at these a number of times on the website. We can then grab 3 clips of those black shoes. We can blend those together so that could be fed to Ella, for example, on a landing page, on an email, as a GIF, or perhaps as a video. So that's the example that you're seeing on the right-hand side of this slide. We can really then take that one step further with another layer of data over the top. So we might be looking at flip-flops in the summer, black boots when it's raining. So this could be fed to Ella on a rainy autumn day versus flip-flops during springtime, during lovely weather when Ella might be thinking about going out in flip-flops, as an example. So that's how you can see how we can really start sweating the assets, maximizing your existing content, layering over a couple of layers of data to start building some really engaging, timely content. So the third opportunity is really is about scalability. It's about being able to ramp up, or indeed ramp down in real time. So really being able to seamlessly integrate personalization with other online activities, and indeed iterate with this targeting content, continually having that feedback loop around what content is working, what content's being shared, what content isn't quite hitting the mark, and how can we scale down, iterate, test, see, right, take the learnings, and then ramp back up again. Because we're talking about these one-to-one conversations and really listening to what conversations are resonating with customers, with brands. So then taking those learnings, ramping them up again, scaling, measuring the success again, and really again maximizing that investment in content, and making sure that we're getting that ROI. So this is an example of a recent campaign that we produced for WaterAid. And I think this is a great example of real-time scalability. So WaterAid really needed to engage with two core audiences to take part and promote their WaterAid challenge. So this was specifically an Australian campaign. The context of this campaign was right after the Australian bushfires that happened earlier this year, and right sort of as Corona was hitting. So not really a prime time for raising money. You know, and not really prime time for fundraising activities, I should say. So WaterAid really needed something new, something innovative, something different to really engage their 5,000 supporters. So we took existing content, so sweating the assets, and we created 5,000 of these unique videos in a matter of hours. We personalized the fundraiser's name, their fundraising goal, and indeed their URL. And I'm just going to play the video in the background here. Unfortunately, due to the technology, we can't actually listen to the soundtrack, and I'm not going to sing along. So here you get an idea of what the creative looks like. And we saw some really, really great results, again, around open rates, around click rates. And indeed, you know, in terms of the click rate, this is the highest click rate of any email so far for the 2020 WaterAid Challenge. So we had some really amazing feedback. There's a much more in-depth case study that sits on wearedistillery.co that goes into sort of more of the insight, more of the results. But again, now, you know, we scaled this campaign really effectively by dripping out, seeing how the campaign performed in the early stages, the content performed, and then really scaling that up to render out the 5,000 pieces of content and deliver them in a timely manner. So Peter was going to now pick up on integrating personalization into your content.
Yes, thanks, Steve. So for this section, I just wanted to highlight a few sort of key questions you could ask yourself when it comes to thinking about campaigns that you want to have a personalized approach. So the first question is actually, when should you go personalized? I think the key point here is to identify what are the key business objectives and what are the sort of data points that you can measure around that. So it goes back to Steve's point of, you know, making a strategic and data-driven approach to any personalized campaign. Because I'm sure, you know, as many of us in our content or marketing backgrounds, we've seen, you know, trends come and go. We've seen brands hop on, hop off without really, you know, thinking what can it be properly used for and how it can make a real difference to their customers. And we don't want, you know, this to be a gimmick, because your relationship with your customers shouldn't be treated as such. We also see that you know, consumers are becoming a lot more savvy when it comes to personalized content. So they don't, you know, they don't react kindly to just a blanket email with products that don't really speak to them, that they've never even looked at or purchased before. So this is where, again, a more intelligent approach will come into play when you're thinking about a personalized approach. So on the right-hand side, we highlight some of the best use cases when it comes to personalization. So the first point is, you know, you really need to you know, focus on making the right first impression. Now, I'm sure many of us have received emails from brands or companies that says, "Dear first name." So it's clear that their data that they used for the email campaigns wasn't up to date, it wasn't complete. And when you you know, when you receive that as a customer, you know, it just leaves a bad taste in your mouth that, you know, you're spending so much time, so much emotional energy with this brand, and they can't even, you know, get your first name right. So that's a really important point, that when you do go on a personalized campaign approach, just really you know, look at the data, team up with your data team to really interrogate the data that you have to really make sure that it's up to date and the best quality. Now, the second point we want to highlight is really focusing on striking the right emotional chord. So what we mean by this is actually, if we look back to that WaterAid example, what really worked in that is, on one hand, it was great for the brand. It got the brand purpose branding out there, but it also reminded, the supporters of why they are, passionate about this this campaign. Why are they following WaterAid? So it really fits into that emotional bond that they have with that charity. Now, it's not just for charities or other nonprofits, but as a brand, really look at what are those emotional bonds that you have and finding ways to play on that. Just remind people why they're consumers and loyal followers of you as a brand. And finally, the final point we want to highlight is creating timely experiences. So I don't know what it's like around you, but here it's a bit hot, a bit stuffy. So this is an excellent opportunity for, say, my favorite ice cream shop to send me an email because they know what the temperature is. They know that I go in there 6-7 times a week. They know what flavors I like. So this is a great opportunity to ping me an email, use some images that will get my mouth salivating, and just remind me that they haven't seen me in a few hours, and so I should pop on over. So it's finding those timely experiences, and with this, it's a good opportunity again to look at the data that you have. So it's not just the name of customers, but what is the weather data? What is going around in their geography? What other behaviors can you really tap into to really show that you know them as a customer? So now I am going to hand it back to Steve for his advice on how to be smart with how we use personalized data.
Yeah, so I really wanted to talk about not being creepy, because I think, as we've talked about previously, personalization is a great way of building these one-to-one conversations and a deeper connection with your audience, but it's also an amazing way to piss them off. It's when you get the data wrong or it's creepy, we've seen it before. For example, when we were creating 30,000 videos for all the London marathon runners who are raising money on Just Giving, without clean data, like Peter was talking about, it's very easy to make a mistake with someone's gender, for example, which then has an impact on the creative. So this creepy factor is both around clean data, but also around making sure you have opt-in, because so often we see people when they're brands and other agencies, when they're at the beginning of their personalization journey, they jump on board and they want to personalize everything, and there's sort of almost become this data show off. Yes, you've got data. We've got data. Like Facebook has most of the data, but like, don't be a data show off, and make sure that you're making the moments count, and you're always adding value. I think an example of being a little bit creepy is this ad that I constantly get fed on LinkedIn, and I don't like the fact that it's been personalized with my image, slightly old photo of me on LinkedIn, and I am being fed to myself in an ad because I don't believe I didn't believe that I'd given LinkedIn permission to use my photo, and it sort of really grates with me every time I log into LinkedIn. So I think it's just really important to reflect on the creepiness factor. What is adding value? What's not adding value? What is this piece of content in a wider journey for one of your customers or one of your fans? And really, don't be like the GIF. Don't be creepy. So Peter's now going to introduce Boundary, our personalization engine.
Yes, and I think we have a video that we might play to really introduce. So let it roll. So we don't, I don't think we have the music. There is a banging soundtrack, but we'll just show the content. Yeah, so that is just a quick overview of what Boundary is and what it can achieve. So I think if we go to the next slide, it'll, this is, yeah, a broad overview of what Boundary can do. So we present Boundary as a content personalization engine capable of personalizing individual videos and GIFs at a mass scale. And when it comes to the videos and GIFs, it goes back to what Steve mentioned. It's, we're able to sweat existing assets. So with Boundary, it can use, content you have in store, whether it's videos, images, GIFs, or on the other hand, if there is a resource or available, we can help out with creating new content for a personalized campaign. But that isn't necessary to use Boundary. What we are proud of Boundary is that it's backed by creative insight and production from our team. So, aside from us three, there's a team of writers, a team of producers for us to really help you interrogate the data and finding the right content to overlay that data. So it adds layers of personalization at scale to those content that you do have. So if we go to the next slide, it's just a few reasons of why Boundary, why we're really excited about this Boundary tool. So it is, allows personalized content that drives a deeper connection with your audience and can achieve higher shareability. So again, going back to examples like what we did for the London Marathon or with WaterAid, when you receive that and it has your name, has other data that really presents you as a hero, you're much more likely to share that on social media than just a standard video that isn't really personalized to you. And what we are really excited about this is that it drives a deeper fan engagement with the content. So it's not just for sharing on social media. It could also help out with product recommendations, with, for example, the clothing, the shoes examples. It can help out with employee engagement, so a lot of internal communications, and also examples of data visualization, which we'll tap on later, and B2B marketing. So the possibilities are quite broad. It again starts with your business challenge, what data you have, and what creative we can present to overlay that data with. So if we go to the next slide, it shows a bit of a flowchart. We all like flowcharts to present how we would work when it comes to a personalized Boundary campaign. So again, starting out with the key challenge, because we really want to have a campaign that's not just doing it for the sake of having a personalized campaign, but what challenge are we trying to solve? What can we, boost when it comes to ROI, which can help make the business case internally for investing in a personalized campaign. We then take a two-pronged approach. So looking at your content creative, so whether it's existing content that you have, or again, if resource is available, of creating new content, whether that's film, stills, animation, and then we overlay that with the fan data. So again, we'll sit down with you to really interrogate the data that you have and trying to find what are the best data points to answer the key challenge that you have or the initial idea. So we take those two sections, put them through the Boundary engine, and then boop, out pops out the unique URLs. And what is great about that is that we would hand that data sheet with all the unique URLs for each of your individual customers and hand it back to you, which gives you more ownership to distribute that, whether it's through through your emails or other CRM avenues. And from there, the consumers will see the individual content and then share it with their campaigns, share it with their social networks, which would expand the initial reach, which is great for everyone. That's a bit about how Boundary works, and it can take even the most general communication and just really take it up a notch. So this example here of a meeting invite, just by putting in simple data like the date of the meeting, the name of the recipient, it can really take things up a level. So it's quite a lot of exciting potential for content through Boundary. So now I want to hand it back to Steve, because he has a couple of things to talk about when it comes to trigger and batch communications.
Yeah, so this is something that we talk about a lot with our clients as we're onboarding them, and really the difference between trigger rendering and batch rendering. And it's just a very important difference when considering a personalization piece, because the easiest way to explain it is around first of all, the trigger rendering is when data is inputted by the user, and that triggers Boundary to then create that content and deliver it to the user. So the easiest way to imagine it is a form sitting on a website that asks a series of questions, and we did exactly this for our holiday email of this year, where I could have a look at the form that was sitting on our website, and I could send Ella and Peter personalized holiday videos. That once I hit enter, I put in that data, then that triggered the render and delivered that content to myself and whoever I was sending that information to. Versus batch rendering, which plugs into your existing data sources, and Distillery as data processors. We haven't talked about GDPR. I'm sure a question will come up about that during the Q&A in a couple of minutes. But we're data processors in the data journey. Through batch rendering, we blend the data that exists, that you or our clients own. We blend that data with the base content to create that personalized content, and we can do that at scale. So as Peter was talking about, we can create tens of thousands of videos in just minutes in very near real time. So that's when the Just Giving example of 30,000 videos, or perhaps WaterAid 5,000 videos, we can do that all in the cloud with batch rendering, versus the trigger rendering, which is like one here, then someone else fills in a form a couple of hours later, and it will trigger another render. So an example of that trigger rendering is with WWF, and they've got, if you haven't seen it, they've got this fantastic carbon calculator on their website that measures your carbon footprint. And it's really valuable information, slightly, well, for me, heart-wrenching when I did it and started to rethink my whole approach to my life and my carbon footprint. But once you go through the steps and you fill out the form and you answer questions like how many flights you take a year, do you have kids, how many bedrooms are in your house, the data is then visualized in a series of infographics that you can see on the right hand side. And so obviously that's triggered for that output. So with our personalization engine Boundary, we could trigger that that render to bring all of that data that you've inputted out into a personalized piece of content that would be even more shareable as video to your social networks to continue that conversation on people reducing their carbon footprint and encourage more people to take the test, if you like. So I'm going to hand over to Ella now to start us on a recap.
Thanks, Steve. So I hope you found the session useful. We just wanted to recap on the opportunities presented in the webinar. So firstly, reimagining your existing assets. Obviously right now it's more and more difficult to go out and shoot new content. So it's all about rethinking and reimagining your existing content and really sweating those assets. So this in turn helps you maximize your cost on investment. This is something that you've already spent money on, and then you can obviously just continue to use those pieces of content. And thirdly, you can scale the content. So, you know, using that, sending that content with slight tweaks sent out to a wide range of your fans, and really maximizing that. So, and then last but not least, don't be creepy. You know, always choose the right data points for personalization. You know, there are so many different pieces of data that companies have on you, and you want to make sure that they're using the right ones so that you don't feel weirded out when they contact you. You feel, you know, special, and it's been a really helpful experience rather than a bit creeped out. So now we've got some time for some questions. So I've already seen one come through from Deborah, which is great. And so I will just read that out. So what are some good examples of B2B brands that personalize well, and best practices when you've had a broad, when you have a broad employee base and product offering? So I can think of some examples in terms of what I think some B2B brands could do, rather than ones that I know that are doing well. I don't know whether Steve or Peter, you have any examples, but I was thinking in terms of, you know, if brands, so B2B brands along with B2C brands can obviously create personalized content for employee engagement. So similar to the delivery example, you could be talking about, you know, certain benchmarks and things that employees have done, and it can be more of an HR sort of practice to motivate and encourage staff. Alongside that, if a B2B brand, for example, delivers sort of training and accreditation and things like that, perhaps it could be, you know, they deliver GIFs or videos talking about, you know, the different sort of accreditations that businesses or employees at those businesses have ticked off and what they need to do to get to the next stage, things like that. If it's a business bank, it could be personalized videos or GIFs talking about, you know, where the business has been spending their money, and where maybe some analysis on where they could be cutting costs for the next month, or where they need to, you know, open a bank in a different country or something like that. They're just a few examples off the top of my head. I don't know whether Steve or Peter, you have any other thoughts for B2B examples.
Yeah, for me, I think one good example is technology companies or telecoms who work with brands. So, you know, we could, you know, imagine, you know, a monthly bill could show how much data you as an office, as a company, or even individual employees, how much data are you using? And we could see that sort of grow either month by month or year by year. So it takes it up a notch. So rather than a static image or just a row of numbers of this is the amount you're spending or the amount of data you're taking, it's almost using that World Wildlife Fund example and having more of an animated approach of using the real-time data to give the company's broader oversight and can help them make a better decision of actually this plan isn't the best for us. We could save more if we relook at the data. And I think my only other point on the top of my head is with employee engagement. We've had a few conversations in the APAC area because for them, they may have a headquarters in, say, Singapore or Kuala Lumpur, but we'll have loads of different branches across Southeast Asia, as well as Australia. So it becomes even more imperative for them to create that bond internally from an internal comms perspective. So having this personalized approach could just be one part of that campaign to really make a unified approach for offices spread across different regions.
Great. And we have another question from Stephen. So which kinds of products and services is personalization particularly useful for in the middle of this lockdown?
I could think of one, like just a personal example. So I don't know if you're aware of like Duolingo. It's that green owl that helps you learn foreign languages. And if you don't do it, Duolingo could, Duo the owl can be a bit passive aggressive. So I think they as a company realize in the current events, people are at home. They may have a bit more time to pursue language learning. So for me, I've been getting a lot more emails asking me why I haven't been studying. And actually, this is for real. Just a few days ago, I received an email. The heading just said, "You're making Duo sad." So that's that really got my eyes opened. But again, with Duolingo, it could take what Ella mentioned of internal training, of tracking how you're doing through animation. They know exactly how much time I spent, what languages I'm learning, how far I have to go. So with the personalized approach, it could take passive aggressive messages to a next level. Steve, I don't know if you have some other observations.
Yeah, I think so we held a webinar earlier this week, specifically with some marketeers and some other industry voices. And there's a really interesting point made around brands, specifically in APAC, who weren't actually getting their marketing right during COVID, from George's perspective. And it was really around how brands all of a sudden, who perhaps hadn't been as empathetic or as warm or had that deeper connection, who all of a sudden were being sort of best friends with their audience. And I think that's a really interesting point. It's like it's having that the opportunity, I think, for brands during COVID is to know when to have a conversation and when not to have a conversation. And everyone, it's fine for some brands to talk about pulling their marketing spend because of COVID, but actually, could they be adding value in a different kind of way during COVID to their customers or their fans? And I think that's the opportunity for personalization for brands at the current time. It's about adding value. It's about actually thinking about what everyone's going through. Is it the right time to have a conversation, with your customers, and what should that conversation actually be about? And it doesn't matter if you're you're selling music, or you're selling soft drink, or you're selling language skills and e-learning. It's around, right, is this the right time to be communicating with my audience? What does my audience want to hear? And can we add value? And if we're not adding value, should we just shut up?
Yeah, and I was just thinking off the top of my head in terms of other examples. So, obviously you can choose which sort of data points you decide to use when contacting your fans. So, for example, with all these different lockdown rules in place. You know, some countries it's already been lifted, some countries it didn't even take place, some countries it's still quite strict. And I wonder, you know, apps like Calm and Headspace, you know, they could tailor the types of meditations and things that you get dependent on what lockdown situation you're currently in, what country you're in. It could be as, you know, it's quite unusual like that. You know, you just kind of think about all the different data sets, like what country someone's in, or what they've ticked as their sort of main interests, and feed them content that would be relevant and interesting to them. I was just also thinking in terms of flights, you know, all these people that have booked flights that will now have to rebook them. You know, a lot of people like myself have got vouchers and not a refund. So it would be interesting to me to get a personalized video or a personalized GIF or something telling me, you know, the next flights that will be running to that destination in the coming months would be useful to me, rather than me going on Skyscanner or whatever it is, looking to see when that might be possible. Yeah, just a couple of thoughts there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And again, you could even take that to another level of giving consumers information, like Foreign Office information of which countries are now safe to fly to, what are the quarantine regulations for your destinations. So it goes back into that core, you know, brand emotion of, you know, we're here to help you travel, but we want to make sure you travel safely and, you know, with confidence.
Exactly. And then there's one final question here. So have you found that the personalization of content has resonated more during COVID times?
I think the WaterAid example was, we had exceptional results with that campaign, and that was during COVID, just after the bushfires. So I think really, yes, from what we're working on, I think people are taking the time to look at more content. Everyone sat at home, and I think that personalization offers the opportunity to spark people's interest with great creative right from the get-go of that piece. And if the top of the content is personalized and can really get people engaged, then people will spend longer with your content, consuming your content.
Yeah, and I think a good example industry to look at during COVID is a lot of the arts and heritage organizations, so the National Theatre or British Museum. So a lot of them, you know, they want to, you know, lean into the purpose of educating and entertaining. So I've noticed a lot more content where they are offering, you know, insights or recorded lectures, and they know, you know, some of my interests, whether it's history or things like that. So I have noticed an uptick when it comes to those organizations of being really smart of the, you know, the content that they do have. They already have these film lectures. They already have these, you know, filmed theatrical performances, and they know that I like, you know, certain genres. So it's a really great example of them providing the content, but also reminding me that they're still there, they need our support, and are ready to go buy a ticket once things lift up again.
Great, thank you. So that's all of the questions we've got time for. So I'm pleased you get in touch with myself and Peter if you'd like to discuss Foundry and personalization further. Thank you very much.